Well, greetings everybody. I would like to bring out a couple tips today. As we know, the seals may have been started to be popped. The first horse could be the this time of trouble that's upon all of us now, where the first spirit rider comes with a bow and doesn't even have arrows, and yet the entire earth has been conquered. He came to conquer and to conquer, as it shows over here in Revelation 6:1-2 it talks about. But what I wanted to speak about here today is a few tips, because we know the time of trouble is going to get pretty bad. The next seal is going to be where another fiery red fiery red went out, and it was granted to the one who sat on it to take peace from the earth, and that people should kill one another. And there was given to him a great sword, to the spirit. I've seen how the spirits can actually take a person over and cause them to murder. I brought out a video on that. Nobody seemed to really show much interest, so I didn't finish speaking on it. When that demon ran through my house, it kind of looked like the Wolverine, and went off into the woods just off my property, where the worst murder ever to take place in Abilene, Texas, took place there on New Year's Eve. But due to not wanting to bring out things of that magnitude, because I don't want to scare people or anything else, we need to be realizing in our minds that these are spirits. This is a spirit that's coming. When he opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature say, "Come and see." And he's going to show there's this rider on this horse who's going to come. And even Daniel, when the Holy Malach came to Daniel and said, "Hey, I've heard your prayers, but I was held up, fighting with the king of Persia there, until Michael came to relieve me so I could come to you." And these are things that are actually taking place right now. The Malachim are fighting over each and every one of you all, and I want to say that I'm real thankful for you to come here to listen to these words. But I'm really proud of you, and I don't mean the pride in a bad way, as if I've had anything to do with it. I didn't. I'm just a mouthpiece for our King. But you keep coming back to this channel, to these videos, because you can hear the truth and you can understand what our King is saying. In fact, right now, and I don't want you to be prideful thinking you had anything to do with it, because you can't even choose our King. He chooses us. And if you are blessed enough to be able to hear and to act upon every living word that's being brought forth here, it's not because you did it. Our King has done it, and I'm really proud of y'all, for hearing the truth and turning from your wicked and evil ways and starting to walk in it. And it's a long process, but I'm going to tell you, so don't be prideful. What you understand right now, if you believe and you understand that you can have salvation, and that all the entire scriptures of the book of Yahweh, what they call the Holy Bible now, condensed, comes down to keeping the 10 Commandments by keeping the give or take 613 laws, a schoolmaster, that brings you to our King, so you could trust in him only. That's everything in the scriptures, what it was bringing the whole thing down to. And if you understand that, my friend, my brother, my sister that's listening to this, and you actually understand it, well, congratulations, because you actually understand more than 99.999999901% of all the people on the earth. You know more than any of those about the Holy Scriptures and how to acquire salvation at this time. And the times are going to get tough, so don't be proud. It's pretty close to being self-righteous. If you think that you're doing right but breaking the law, in doing so, feeding the homeless a pork chop or, something that's unclean, that's self-righteousness. Righteousness is Deuteronomy 6, verse 25. That's right. It will be righteousness for us, for you, if we keep his commandments. And it's the same thing with pride. We must understand that we don't do anything really. Our King is leading us and guiding us into everything that takes place. The holy Malach around us are guiding us by use of the Holy Spirit. And there's devils and spirits and, things and wickedness in high places, the principalities of the air and such, that are trying to get at us, but we're being protected. And I know it's difficult for some people to understand this, but some have never experienced the supernatural things that take place in one's life, and it's not easy for some to understand. But please understand that these things are taking place. Our King is alive and well today. He's living in us, those who believe. And these seals are being opened, and a time is coming upon us. It's going to be pretty rough. I don't know. I'm not a prophet, and I've always said I'm not a prophet. Not at this time anyway, and I really don't desire to be a prophet, because I know what takes place with them. They put Isaiah into a log and sawed him in half, I really don't desire to be a prophet. They was hated, They brought truth and they brought peace, but the people rejected it. And they ended up living in caves and everything, throwing them down in wells that were, up to their chest in mud, and throwing scraps of bread to them, it's a horrible life for a prophet. And there's people out there today, and I've been chewing some butts on some of these people, hoping they'll understand to quit their prophet, they're claiming to be a prophet by speaking against the words, as it speaks of in Jeremiah chapter 23 and many other places. We don't need to elevate ourselves to these levels. I'm not a prophet. I don't know exactly the prophecies, but because I keep the two greatest commandments in the law, to love our Heavenly Father with my whole mind, heart, soul, might, my every fiber in my DNA, to love our Creator. And the second is like unto it, to love my brother as myself. I can do those things, and I love our Father by keeping his laws and commandments. If you break any of them, if you're eating clams, or wearing alligator boots or anything of this sort, you're not loving our Creator, because he told you not to even touch these things. But anyway, these seals are going to be popped. I don't know exactly when they're going to come and how it's going to come about. I'm only saying that I believe that this first seal has been opened because of the way this here spirit on his horse comes, as if it was peace. He's on this white horse. I had one fella try telling me, oh, well, wherever it says white, it means righteousness and holy and this and that, so it's got to be the 144,000 it's talking about. And I'm like, come on, man. Talked about the baker there, that was in prison with Yosef, and the baker said, on my head were 3 white baskets, so, they were white. Just because this horse is white doesn't mean it was a holy horse or, anything of that sort. Righteous horse? No, the color white here has very little to do with anything that is speaking of. But this fellow comes, a spirit. He's got a bow and he's got a crown. The authority was given to him, and he went out conquering and to conquer without an arrow being shot. We've all been conquered. So I'm convinced that this is what it's about. It feels right to me in my spirit, and when these things take place, it's like when I first heard my father's name the first time. I was reading it in a Webster's dictionary on the porch, and I saw Yahweh, and it felt right. It was like I always knew it, but I didn't know it. And when I heard it, I understood it, but then it got beat out of me, and I forgot about it until Oh, I was in my 20s, my early 20s, and I was presented with Yahweh's name again, and the shame and the guilt of me forgetting and all that. I had to go through those things, but the point I'm wanting to bring out is these seals, I believe, are starting to be popped. And if we see a lot more death taking place, people wanting to kill one another, and our king even spoke about how, children would turn their parents over for death, and things of this sort. There's plenty of writings in scripture that show how this can take place. And of course, it could be, people just picking up guns and shooting people as they've been doing, going postal or whatever else. There's many ways it could take place, but it's going to be on a large scale. Like it shows here, the first seal, I believe, has been popped already, and it's a large scale. These events are going to be taking place so that we can know and see, from what I understand in scriptures, otherwise I don't know why it was written, that when it takes place, we're going to be able to see and say, wow, that sounds like the second seal was popped. But then this third one that comes, when he opened the third seal, I heard the living creature say, come and see. So I looked, and behold, a black horse, and he who sat on it had a pair of scales in his hand. Now, why is it that, death didn't come on the black horse? I mean, if we're going to go with colors of white and having some sort of significance, why wasn't the one that was black, the black horse, being down here for death? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But anyway, the point here is that he's got a pair of scales in his hand when he comes, when this third seal's pop. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four living creatures saying, a quart of wheat for a denarius, which is, the denarius is a day's wages. And 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and the wine. Now, I think these things are going to take place prior to receiving the mark of the beast, because it clearly shows here that you'll be able to buy, but it's going to be quite expensive. And, that's what I want to point out a little bit about here, is that I'm not saying stockpile everything. We got to put our trust in our king. He's going to take care of us, but I'm not saying to empty out your cupboards either and think that Yahshua is going to come knocking on your door to deliver groceries for you. That's not what it is. Be smart, be wise. If you stockpile too much, you're going to open yourself up for people to want to rob you. But you should have enough. I mean, it talked about scriptures where there was a prophet going through the land, and he stopped, talked to this woman who had a child, and said, hey, make me some pan bread, and she says, oh, I'm sorry, all we got enough is for this last meal for my son and me. We're going to eat it and die. And he says, hey, you go ahead and you make me one first. And then, your jar of oil, your jar of flour will never go empty till this problem passes. And she did, and her oil didn't run out, and her flour didn't run out. Now, it also talked about for the Feast of Unleavened Bread, when they left out, they didn't have the leavening. Their bread wasn't leavened, so they ate unleavened bread for 7 days. In fact, that's about what it takes for a starter like this, a sourdough starter, to actually really come into its activities. You can see here there's a mark right here. And this is a tip that I would like to bring out, and I fed it, and it came up to here, and that was at 3 o'clock this afternoon. Right now it's 6:01, so 3 hours later, it's up to here. And you can see how active it is. It's doubled pretty much in size here. And I'm going to explain what you can do with this, because it's very important, okay? We can stock up a little bit on flour. You can get a grinder or whatever and get some wheat even, and be able to make your own flour from it. And I'm going to be honest, I don't know of anybody that I've ever known that came to the knowledge of the truth that has had a gluten intolerance or a intolerance for milk or butter. I've never seen anyone that actually believed the truth that had these problems. Now, if you do and you truly believe, I apologize, but I believe through prayer you're going to be healed of these things, because there's a prayer that our King gave to people that a lot of people will just say the prayer and think they're justified for their every deed that they do, the Our Father prayer. And our King said, in this manner pray, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. How great is your name. Thank you for letting me know your name. And it goes on a little further and it says, thank you this day for our daily bread. Now, bread has gluten in it. So why would people even say the prayer that are gluten intolerant? Because they don't believe. I fully believe that if you truly believe and trust in our King, if you're keeping the commandments and the laws, and like I said, even this virus that's going on around out there, if it were true or whatever, I made the statement that I don't believe a true believer could even get it. I believe the only ones that'll get it, and of course they showed where it wasn't a slaughterhouse, but it was a packing plant for pork, okay, where they're doing hams and everything else, slicing it up, packaging it, processing the carcasses of the pig. And most everybody there got the stuff, And there's a lot of other places like Boeing where they didn't work with those unclean animals or whatever, though they probably brought a ham sandwich to work and obtained that unclean thing into their holy temples, which allowed the virus to also enter in. And I still believe that's the case. I don't believe that if you're keeping the clean laws, even back with the Black Plague, they came against those they call the Jews, but at the time their names were the Yadaim. Those who pray with uplifted hands is what Yadaim meant. And the people came against them, even saying they poisoned the wells because the Jews didn't come down with the Black Plague. Everybody else was affected with it, but not the Jews. And so a great persecution came upon them, the same as it's going to end up coming on us as well, those who keep the commandments, that, after the woman is gathered to that place of protection, which I'm hoping is going to take place even before the sign on the right hand or in the forehead for the mark of the beast. And I'm thinking this is going to take place before as well, but think about it. We thank you for our daily bread. And there's people that can't even eat bread. Well, I believe the believers, there's a message in there for you. When you look here, and it talks about a quart of wheat for a denarius here in Revelation 6:6. Now, there's got to be a reason why they're mentioning the wheat and also the barley, and do not harm the oil and the wine. I believe that it's going to be a staple, as you've already seen, some of you. My son from Abilene, Texas, said, Dad, he says, after the word went out about this, he says, we went out there to Walmart and such, he says, and there wasn't nothing on the shelves. Now, here in Rome, it's different. They do have food here or whatever, but upstate New York is a whole lot different than some of those big cities, okay? I mean, Rome isn't a really big city, but it housed Revereware, where it made pots and pans with the copper bottoms in them and such. We've got Rome Cable, and, short ways away, there's Oneida Limited, where they make most all the silverware for the United States and across the world as well. There's a lot of manufacturing that still takes place here, but most is shut down because of this viral thing. But the point is, we still have food on the shelves. But years ago, many years, probably 30 years ago or so, there was a pope, And the Pope said straight out, control the food, you control the people. And it's not just the food, there's other things, like aluminum foil. It might be very hard to get a hold of before too long. I mean, people might not end up, there may be the second wave coming through that will shut everything down, saying, well, we was wrong on the first one. We should have shut it all down. Now look, it's twice as bad. Now we got to shut everything down. So where are you going to get things like this? And you don't really have to hoard it. I'm going to use this same sheet of aluminum foil several times, and what I did is, instead of wrapping a potato in there individually, just put it into a pan, cover it with aluminum foil tightly, put it in the oven, and you can reuse the aluminum foil over and over again. So you can save boxes that you don't have to buy by just conserving, doing these things. Little things stack up to mean a lot. If you don't have to go out and get aluminum foil, because there isn't any, there's things that you're going to suffer because of it. Now, as far as the dough starter that the sourdough starter, we should all have this in our household, because you can have bread at all times, 2-3 times a day, like I showed. At 3 o'clock, I filled this jar up to here. Now, you can get gallon jars or whatever and make your starter. You just have to feed them every day. In fact, I feed this twice a day now. It was here when I fed it. I put in 50 grams of flour and 50 grams of water, mixed it up, and it's all the way up to here now in 3 hours time, 3 hours and 8 minutes. Now what I'll do here a little later on is the same thing I did earlier. And that is, they tell you that you should throw away half, of your starter here and there as it gets built up or whatever. That's what they recommend you do, is throw it away. I say don't throw it away. Put it into a frying pan with some oil. I mean, look at this. That's a beauty right there. That is straight starter, right straight from the jar. I put it into a hot frying pan with butter, and I put a little bit of salt on there because the starter isn't salted, so I salted it when it was in the pan in the hot butter, and it's beautiful, And then I also put on there some Cajun seasoning, some cayenne pepper and such. But you could take this after, when you fry it in butter, especially. You could use other oils as well, peanut oil, but be careful of the GMO oils. And you can dip this, if it's fried in butter, you could dip it in honey, and then you're eating what you were commanded to eat every day, is honey and butter. It helps you to eschew evil and to understand righteousness much better. Now, as you know, I started out using this little jar when I started, but then I got to a bigger jar like this. And what I'll end up doing is pouring out, at least down to about here, and I'll fry up this tonight. And I'll refeed it, and you want to stir it a couple times a day as well, to keep it working. But it's alive, it's living. I will have me a leavened bread, like a pancake sort of thing, but it's just so delicious. This is pure sourdough starter. You mix this in with a bunch of flour to bake a big bread like I showed you, okay? And that was just, a bit of starter, about that much starter that I pour purely right into the frying pan, fry it up, and the flavor is marvelous. But think about it, here it's going to be a quart of wheat for a denarius. It's going to be expensive, a day's wages. Right now you can buy a 5-pound bag of organic flour from Walmart, and it's like $3.49, I think it is, for a 5-pound bag. That's not a day's wages. You can stock up on these things. Get you some 5-gallon buckets from Lowe's if you can, or even Walmart. They have, in the paint section, usually they'll have them 5-gallon containers, plastic buckets, and you can get the lids. And you can go ahead and put in some of those pill packet things. They come in like supplements, or sometimes drugs or clothing in a purse or whatever. They'll have those little packets of those beads that suck the oxygen out of the air. Put a couple of those in the bucket. Don't open them up. Just put them in the bucket and close it up so that it'll suck the oxygen and the moisture out of there, and it won't allow the bugs to grow. Or you can pack it with nitrogen or whatever, but get a few buckets like that so that you can actually have your bread every day. When you go to feed it, in the morning when you get up, you could pour out like half of whatever you have and make pancakes. You can, if you got a family, use a gallon jar or whatever, and y'all can have bread if you don't have anything else. It's just a thought for you. I hope that we all make it through this great. But I do know the gathering's going to come. We're going to be gathered from the farthest parts of the earth. This is the 144,000, and those that understand the truth, the children of the earth that have heard these words and said, hey, I understand it. And the only reason you do is because our King opened your ears and your eyes so you can see and you can hear. So give him the honor, the glory, and the praise, so our Father will be given the honor, glory, and praise from the Son. That's how it works. That's how we get to the Father. And the Son even said, hey, I don't even have to tell the Father, about I don't have to tell him anything about you. The Father already knows anyway. But the Son doesn't have to forward it to the Father because he's given authority over all things. So remember, that the times are going to be tough. We need to skimp on things and conserve the best we can because it's going to be tough. And we should have enough that we can help others. But I do believe when we're gathered and such, and those that are the children of the earth as well, and then it talks about in Micah chapter 4 and Isaiah chapter 2, I believe it is, where it speaks of where they say, hey, I was glad when they said unto me, let us go to the house of Yahweh. And then it talks about where we're going. All the nations are going to flow to that place. Now, whether we have a jar that never goes empty, or what, I don't exactly know, but our Father is going to provide for us through his righteous Son. We're going to find the way to do it, but we're going to see some tough times because I believe we're going to go through all these 7 or 6 seals to where this great earthquake comes, and then comes the gathering over here in chapter 7. So we've got a lot of tough times to go through. We're going to see people killing each other. We're going to see, the death come, and then the earthquakes and everything. Then we're going to be gathered. But I believe it's going to be before the mark of the beast. Don't take my word for it. Prove all things. I don't know. It's just speculation. It seems right to me from the way that I believe the prophecies are going to take place. And I just hope that we're all going to be gathered there together. There will be some left behind, though. They're going to have to test their faith, even by losing their heads. I'm afraid this is going to take place. But those with the understanding at that time, as you have right now, knowing more than all the preachers of the earth put together, you know more about the scriptures than all of them put together. Just because our King has opened your eyes and your ears to hear these words when they're presented to you from this mouthpiece that our King is using. And I'm letting him use it as much as he desires, though it kills me to do so, but there is benefits even in pain and sorrows and suffering. Like our King had spoke here, he said, let me see. It says, Revelation 3:19, he says, as many as I love, I rebuke and chasten. Therefore, be zealous and repent. So that's the message today, my friends. And like I say, you'll never have such delicious bread as a sourdough right straight from the frying pan, man. It is marvelous. You could put in nuts and berries and everything in it while you got them now. but it may be a thing that's going to keep us alive. With that, I say I love y'all. Bye.